A lot of you have heard about Bitcoin. In fact, I bet everyone has heard about Bitcoin. That's the minimum, because it's been all over the media for the last few years, and many of you would say, isn't it something which is a thing of the past already, right? And but I bet a lot of us don't know what Bitcoin really is, apart from the fact that you see a fancy price graph and you know a lot of people made money. And maybe some people lost money as well. So this presentation is an attempt to explain you what is Bitcoin and what is blockchain, or how about blockchain was invented as a result. Now a lot of you may also say blockchain is great, but Bitcoin pata nahi, I don't know if it's a great thing. So I hope that this presentation will demystify a lot of these things for you. This presentation is meant for people who know absolutely nothing about Bitcoin or blockchain. But then, isn't that a lie? Because I just told you everyone has heard of Bitcoin. So you know something about Bitcoin, but let's consider that if you have not read the Bitcoin white paper, or if you have not technically studied what Bitcoin is as a technology, or if you are not an engineer, you are rightly placed to attend this session, because I'm a non-engineer and I'm non-technical, and I've spent the last year trying to understand what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, and this is a presentation where I'm trying to summarize it for dummies, for noobs like me. So let's get started. Introduction to Bitcoin. What should you expect? You know. Before we start this presentation, I have a question for you. And during the series of these slides, a lot of other questions will come to you. Feel free to ask any questions, any doubt, anything, and I'll make sure I ask a lot of questions as well. But how does the supply of money work? I want to make sure all of you understand the basics of this. So I have a question that if each of you had 1 lakh rupee each, and let's say the total amount of money in this world was, say, 20 lakhs. So say if you had 1 lakh, which means you have 5% of all the money, and you keep that money with you for 10 years, and you come back after 10 years and say, I have 1 lakh rupees. Has the value of those 1 lakh rupees increased or decreased by keeping it for 10 years with you?
Decreased for sure.
It's decreased?
Guaranteed.
Why?
Because new money being printed. No?
How much new money is printed in the last 10 years?
That I don't know. But again, that I don't think anybody knows, because every government prints as per requirement. It's not backed.
Do you guys think what he's saying is right, or is he crazy?
Money printing is based on some golds and all.
It is.
It's based on something. So here is the thing, that if you hold 1 lakh rupees for 10 years with you as cash, the purchasing power of that 1 lakh rupees has almost certainly gone down, and it holds true for almost any other currency, because you had 5% of all currency in the market, given the assumption that there was only 20 lakh rupees in supply. But you don't know how much more has been printed in 10 years. Nobody asks you. You do, of course, go and vote and give your vote to certain elected officials who appoint more officials, who, through a complex process, decide how much should be printed, but you don't have any control over it, and you probably don't even know how much is printed. Maybe there is a public record, but you don't know if it's transparent, if it is something that you control, or it definitely is not predictable. So that's how supply of money works. And I want to leave you with this thought over here as we go through this presentation. We'll touch upon this topic again when we refer to Bitcoin and some economics around Bitcoin. So, now let's talk about making money digital. How can money be digital? So let me give you an example. So I'm feeling generous, I'll take a 50 rupee note over here and I'll give it to him over here. What just happened over here?
You just lost 50 bucks.
I just lost 50 bucks. But if you think about it, he has very swiftly kept it in his pocket like it's secure. He knows that's a real note. Are you sure it's a real 50 rupee note?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it is. So, I took out a 50 rupee note. I gave it to him. A transaction just happened. And it has been settled right here. The transaction is final. What do I do if I want to do this digitally?
Paytm.
Right? He's already giving his account number. We can use banks for it, right? So, is Paytm digital? So the question here is, how do we make money digital? How do we transact digital? Maybe going to a bank or going to Paytm or any such, maybe using UPI, are right answers. For example, I could go to my bank, say Kotak Bank, your bank maybe HDFC, and then I'll transfer the money to you. So how traditional money works digitally? That we involve two extra parties, which is your bank and my bank, to do the transfer. The money doesn't really flow, but they keep an account of how much money you have, how much money I have, and they just tell us these are your updated balances. You necessarily need to have an account with them. They could probably block your account. They could do a lot of things to obstruct this transaction as well if they want to. They generally don't do it. Banks are very reliable. There's also something called a central banker which issues this money and has a lot of policies around this money on how this money can be used. Like they can stop you from using this money to buy certain things like Bitcoin. Okay, so is it your money that is being transferred? Is it really that the money has become digital? Or people have found trusted third parties or institutions to help you do a digital transaction? At the same time, if you when Bitcoin was first introduced, say back in 2009, this would have been a wild kind of a claim, and this could have been challenged a lot more. But I think in India we can safely talk about, even if the money in his pocket, he doesn't know if tomorrow morning if that money will have any worth. Right? So something like that money being declared as has no value, zero value, or cannot be used for transactions, that power is available with the third person. By the way, I'm not against that power being with the third person, but it's supposed to be my money. I work all day over here to earn this money, and what control do I have over this money? So these are some of the fundamental questions on how can money be truly digital? How can you really own the money that you own? How can that be done? Is what an individual or a group of people going by the name Satoshi Nakamoto decided to solve by inventing Bitcoin or inventing blockchain and Bitcoin together in the process. So let's answer some fundamental questions again. If money was to be truly digital, right, how could me and Zebpay over here could transact with it? Say money is a file. I have this file which is money, it's not a physical note which we just gave. I sent that file to him. Can money be digital like that? Right? Are there any challenges? If we do this, we make all money as digital files which we exchange with each other. Can that work? How can money be truly digital? If money was digital, I have a file with me which is worth, say, whatever the file says it is 10. I want to send 10 units of this money to you. I can just email it to you, and money is digital now. We don't have to go to a bank or anyone else to transfer it. We all store our files as money. Money becomes digital. Do you see a problem with that?
There are two files.
There are two files?
One is obviously the storage,
Yeah.
and the second is how do you validate that Annkur has actually transferred the money to Zebpay. When Zebpay says he's not received the money, who's going to validate it? Where is it going to be visible? Again,
You send that file to someone else, send it to Deepak. Deepak says, yes, I got the file, I have the money now.
Correct. But why would I want to? When, let's say, for example, I need to validate what the balance is, whether Annkur has enough to even send you.
He sent you the file is money. I give you the note is money. I give you the file is money.
Correct. Now it's your word against mine.
What you're saying is, what's the guarantee that I have not given a copy of that file to Deepak also?
Yes.
So I just printed money myself.
Yeah,
How does monetary supply work? It's obvious challenge, right?
Yeah.
So
Double spending.
yeah. So money can't easily become digital. It's not. It's a big problem. There has to be some central authority which says that, okay, this is money, this is the limited amount of money, I will verify if it is genuine money, and I will make sure that all of you are transacting with the guidelines that I have set, and that's how money works. But this is exactly what we are trying to avoid when we are saying we want to make money truly digital. One of the challenges is to make it decentralized and yet secure. So, think of how this could be decentralized. Right? The solution is blockchain and Bitcoin. As you know, right? There's nobody, we are not in 2010 when let's go through this presentation like Amway in a multi-level marketing scheme and all of you will now sign up and sell soaps. That's not happening. And you know it's Bitcoin, it's blockchain. But let's try and understand how the fundamentals of this works. Think about what is the problem we are solving. That did I really have that balance to send across to Zergs? Did Zergs receive it? What's his new updated balance? All of this is basically saying having a ledger. Someone has to maintain that ledger that these transactions have happened. Blockchain is a public ledger which is published in an open source format which anyone can access, look at, and I love that he's taking notes. I really love the fact. But that's great. So, which anyone can look up and know who has how much balance. And it's maintained publicly, which means all transactions are noted publicly. By the way, it's pretty radical if you think of it. All the transactions which we are trying to do privately in banks, in cash, in gold, however, we are saying in this world, if you want to remove trust on certain parties, you have to just make it decentralized and open to everyone. So all transactions are open, they're published in a public ledger, and all transactions can be seen, all transactions are recorded in front of everyone else, of course digitally, and that's it. That's how money moves. So
Hacking, robbery का तो और फिर problem आएगा ना.
hacking and robbery, will get to that, on how that works. So you're saying, what if someone writes something wrong on this ledger? That's obviously a problem. What if someone does something else? But there are a lot of things which could happen. But just imagine if this was, this room of whatever 7, 8, 10 people we are, is all the people in the universe. If these are the only people. And if we wanted to transact with our own currency, and we wanted it to be digital, it could simply be that we have a whiteboard over here, who has how much money is written over here, and whenever someone makes a transaction, that person shouts and says, okay, I'm giving 10 Bitcoin to Zergs, and in front of everyone it is written over here, so that's the truth. No, nothing actually is exchanged. I do want those 50 rupees back, by the way, but we'll get to that. So let's go to the next slide. So this distributed ledger, we need it to be decentralized and secure, which is your point. And let's figure out how that was done. And I'm going to use an analogy to explain this. Imagine that Bitcoin or blockchain, so to say, and when I refer to blockchain, please note that I only refer to Bitcoin's blockchain. This is where blockchain was invented. This was the first blockchain. It has been running for over 10 years without a hiccup or without going down or getting hacked, so to say. So it is the longest proven blockchain. It's the first blockchain. There are a lot of other things which may have happened on blockchain, and honestly, you could spend years just studying this technology. But we are just trying to dumb it down. Let's assume we are in 2010 and I'm explaining you Bitcoin blockchain, which is probably the only blockchain around. So imagine there's a digital city where people keep their money, Bitcoin, in glass buildings. So anyone who has Bitcoin has a glass building of his or her own glass building where Bitcoin is kept. And these glass buildings are special magical glass buildings. And of course it's glass, so you can see through all of those buildings. So I know how much Bitcoin each of you are sitting on in this glass building. And anyone can send money to another glass building without permission or any gate opening. So the magical buildings are such, if I want to send money to your glass building, I don't need your permission. I can just send it through that glass. It's magical glass. But if something has to be taken out from any glass building, it needs a special magic wand, right? And this magic wand, the way it works is, if Alice wants to send some money to Bob, then Alice needs to use this magic wand, go to the terrace of this glass building and shout for everyone to listen that I am sending 10 Bitcoin to this other glass building which is owned by Bob, or which is named Bob. And by showing that magic wand and shouting, that 10 Bitcoin goes there. How does that happen? There are elderly, wise people, so to say, or volunteers, if we may say, who are hovering up in the clouds in this digital city. Now, this is a digital city, so the size of the city really doesn't matter. There are people who have volunteered or who are elders of the city who note all of these shouting and verify that did Alice really use his or her magic wand to send this amount, and they say, okay, yes, this is authentic and this has gone to Bob, and they make a note of it. These elders do only this job. Whatever these elders are verifying, by the way, right? This is secured by something like Hogwarts magic. The magic wand is a real magic, which means these elders can't write anything else. They can only, if the transaction or the command has come from this magic wand, the transaction can be recorded by them. By the way, it's all science at the end of the day, but imagine this is how it works. This is how this blockchain distributed ledger really works, where someone is basically shouting out loud on the internet, in public, in this digital city, that I am sending it out and I am using my magic wand, so you know that this is genuine. These volunteers or elders of the village get a small fee for every transaction which they facilitate. They get a small cut out of it. So they are paid to volunteer. Next. A cloud is created every 10 minutes where all the chatter they have heard from these terraces over the last 10 minutes are put together and it is cemented in a cloud. This cloud is a sum of all transactions in the last 10 minutes. This is also called as a block in the blockchain. So there are many clouds, one being created every 10 minutes. Each cloud references to the previous cloud. So if Bob got money on cloud number 3, which is 10 Bitcoin, and Bob wants to send it to someone else, say success, it's his lucky day already, in cloud number 4, that transaction has to go. In cloud number 3, people can verify and see that Bob had 10 to spend in the future. So every transaction that has happened in the past can be looked up by everyone, by the elders, by this digital city, the magic. So everything is open and transparent, and you know who has how much spending capacity, because all transactions are recorded in the cloud, which together becomes the ledger, the distributed ledger. The one cloud doesn't have everyone's balances. It's the sum of all the clouds, all the transactions, which tells you how much spending capacity or how much money is in that glass building. So anyone in the city can look at the glass building and verify what transactions are happening. They can look at the cloud and verify what transactions are happening. They know who sent how much amount to whom. And when I say who sent how much amount to whom, I know one question that you are thinking is, if I use Bitcoin, everyone will know who I am. The answer is yes and no, and we'll get to that in some time. Every time a cloud is created, now remember the question I asked you about how monetary supply works, how money works, how money is created. Of course, Bitcoin has to come from somewhere. So every 10 minutes when a cloud is created, currently 12.5 Bitcoins are made. This used to be 25 Bitcoins roughly 4 years back. And sometime next year, that is 2020, this will become 6.25. So the supply of Bitcoin is reducing every 4 years at a predictable pace. And every 10 minutes, this Bitcoin which gets created is given to one of these elders who are volunteering, who does the maximum amount of effort by flying up in the clouds and doing work. Let's not get into technicals of what. But one of these volunteers or these elders of the village get these coins for the effort that they have put in. And then they may sell it in the market, and that's how new Bitcoin enters into supply. So you know that new Bitcoin is created every 10 minutes. You know how many Bitcoin is created. The magic or the algorithm or the open source software which runs Bitcoin also defines how many Bitcoin will be there in the market in all, till like eternity. Like in the year 2140, Bitcoin production will go down to 0 or near 0, and there will be no more Bitcoin produced, and the total number of Bitcoin in the market will be 21 million coins. Now you may say there's only 21 million coins and we are over 7 billion people in the world. We'll answer that as well. And this is one of the reasons also why Bitcoin has become valuable. People are fighting for it, that the supply is known, it's diminishing, it's predictable, and it's limited, which is something which gives value to Bitcoin. So to summarize, the elders are the miners. You may have heard there are miners who mine Bitcoin. Those are actually the ledger keepers. They're volunteers who are keeping the ledger, and they get rewarded also because new Bitcoin is created and it comes to one of them. That's why that process is called mining. Clouds, which I referred to in this digital city, are the blocks. They are out, open, people maintain it, people can have a copy of it, people can see all transactions happening. And Magic Wand is the private key. Now the challenge with the private key is you need to understand a bit of cryptography to understand how this private key works. So let's talk about that. Think of this magic wand or private key, public key set as a 2-password system. And to understand this better, we will see a small video. So this is the key slide. If you want to understand how this dual password system or this public key private key set works, do completely watch this video. But let me quickly run you through this. Whenever you create your own glass building, which is by the way free, you can create a glass building because there's no Bitcoin inside it on day one. You create your own glass building, which is basically saying an address which you are generating in the Bitcoin world. You have two other things which are generated along with it, which is the private key and the public key. This is two different passwords which are mathematically linked to this glass building. By the way, if you want to go into technical details, the private key comes first, then you have the public key, and then your glass building comes up. So you actually start from the magic wand and create the building. You could say that, right? You go to Hogwarts, you get your magic wand, or you create your own magic wand and you create your own building, but we are getting into too much technical details. So there is a private key and a public key which is mathematically linked to each other and your glass building. So your public key can be given to any other party. You can send your public key openly, people can see it, and that's not a problem. But this public key does a very interesting thing. Whenever you sign a message using your magic wand or the private key, this public key can be used to verify if you have really signed it without you having to show your magic wand or private key to anyone. So you keep this private key safe with you, which is your magic wand, and you sign any transaction or send any message which is signed by this. And using your public key, which you can make public, anyone can verify that this came from you. This is how it works between you shouting on top of the building and the elders listening to you, or the miners listening to your transaction. They can verify with your public key that this was signed by you, this transfer of funds. But nobody else can do it till they have access to your private key and to sign another transaction. The transaction says how much Bitcoin is going from where to whom. It says that this is signed by this private key, and that transaction in itself is a magic. Now this can't be decoded, it's mathematically secure. Don't think too much about RSA algorithm. The Bitcoin protocol supports many encryption algorithms. This is just used to explain you the concept of public key and private key, and that's how it works. So it's as simple as that. We'll talk more about it, but let's go back to the slides. So there's a common misconceptions that you may say that there are only 21 million coins and there are 7 billion people in the world. You should know that each Bitcoin can be broken into 100 million pieces called Satoshis, or 1,000 pieces called MBTC. Now, this is just like kilograms and grams, liters and milliliters, dollar and cent, rupees and paisa, but this goes to 100 million pieces each, right? And I don't know, I think I read on the internet that one single Satoshi, which is 100 millionth piece of a Bitcoin, became more valuable than see, that is such a mic drop comment that Satoshi became more valuable than some country's currency, right? Now that by itself may not mean a lot, but there is enough room for everyone in the world to use Bitcoin, because 21 million into 100 million pieces, that's a lot of Satoshis out there. So yeah, common misconception, you don't have to buy one single whole Bitcoin, and nobody's going to take a Bitcoin and really throw a coin at you. It is all in the cloud. So you don't store your own Bitcoin. You only have your private key, which gives you spending capacity for Bitcoin, which is against your name on the Bitcoin ledger, which is known as the Bitcoin blockchain. So you really aren't storing Bitcoin with you, it's up in the clouds. You have the power to control it and send it somewhere, so long as you control this magic wand, which brings us to the next misconception, that Bitcoin is easily hacked. The Bitcoin protocol, this whole system of miners and clouds and this magic, this digital village, this village has not been hacked. What happens very often is your magic wand, which is your private key, is lost, and someone takes away your money from your glass building. And you're saying Bitcoin got hacked, you're reading in news, Bitcoin got hacked. Bitcoin did not get hacked, someone lost their key. Or someone gave someone else their key to keep and they lost it. which also happens very often. And this brings us to the most interesting one, which I have kept a suspense so far. Is Bitcoin not anonymous, or is Bitcoin anonymous? Alice sent to Bob, everyone can see it. You need to understand that if I gave some cash to him, and if only two of us were there, when you come to him and you find that cash on him, you don't know where that cash came from until he speaks up. In Bitcoin, every transaction is linked to the wallet address from where it was transferred. So if you have 10 Bitcoin and you had gotten them as 1 Bitcoin each from 10 different glass buildings, anyone looking at the Bitcoin blockchain, the clouds, knows that this building owned by Bob got 1 Bitcoin each from these other 10 buildings. So someday you say, this is my glass building, and you are on top of that glass building. You could easily identify that these are the 10 people who sent me these coins. So these other buildings from where these coins came are probably owned by or controlled by these 10 individuals. So in this manner, Bitcoin is pseudo-anonymous. It's not really anonymous, but it is traceable. I would argue it's more traceable than physical currency or physical gold, but I think we can sufficiently say it is not anonymous. Okay, on this topic, there are two more things you need to understand: hardware wallets and exchanges. So hardware wallets are these pen drive-like devices which helps you store your private key in them. So when you sign a transaction using that hardware wallet, you see the transaction on the small display built in this pen drive-like device, and you say confirm, and only the signed transaction comes out of this hardware wallet. This is one of the more secure ways of storing private keys, your magic wand, for consumers. And you may want to, if you want to store your Bitcoin with yourself, you may want to look up hardware wallets. I don't want to recommend any specific brand, but do your own research. This is one of the ways to keep your Bitcoin safe. A lot of people leave their Bitcoin on an exchange, a third party who will keep or store your Bitcoin with them to help you trade, or a third party who just provides you a wallet solution. These may not be the most secure ways to keep. Ideally, Bitcoin as a concept was meant for you to take control of your own money, and with storing your private keys yourself, you get that power. It's been very technical, but it has rapidly gotten easier, or something which common consumers can do using these hardware wallets. So look that up, and with all Bitcoin related presentations, I want to thank you for sitting through this, but also a very necessary disclaimer that do your own research. I have tried to oversimplify a lot of things. Again, as I told you, I'm not an engineer, I'm not Satoshi Nakamoto for sure, and this is still a field which is rapidly evolving. So do your own research, study about it, maybe go and read the Bitcoin white paper, watch a few more videos online about this, and then make an informed decision about what is your participation in this world of Bitcoin. Or isn't it just fascinating to learn about money, how supply of money works, how the internet of money, a decentralized digital currency on the internet, has been made and has been working for 10 years and is worth hundreds of billions now. So I find it to be very fascinating. I've learned a lot over the past year with Bitcoin, and I hope this sparks your curiosity to learn more about it as well. So thank you.